Hi there, Anne Marie here, and today I am continuing to explore my stencil stash. I'm going to be using another mystery stencil that I had found secondhand. You might notice that the title for today's video says one stencil, three-ish ways today, and that's because I'm going to show you actually 4 techniques, but 2 of them really only felt like half techniques to me. So I thought maybe together they could count as 1 technique. You'll see what I mean. They were just kind of busts as far as what I originally intended as I tried them. I also didn't even try to make the final cards for the stencil coordinate with one another like I have in my previous videos. I just used whatever I felt like for each one, and so these don't match at all beyond the actual stencil that I used. So this is the 4th video actually so far in this series, and so I will link to the playlist here, and let's get started. For the first technique, I'm going to combine 2 different stencils to create one cohesive background. My main stencil is this constellation of stars. I really like the style of the big stars on this stencil, but they're not a whole free field of those kinds of stars. And I wanted more of an overall impact for my background on this one. So I'm going to bring in this smaller 2" by 2" stencil to fill in the gaps in the original pattern. I'm going to use metallic rub-ons on black cardstock so that those stars all really pop. And so you can kind of see how I went in with that smaller stencil, and I just moved it around in a lot of different areas to fill in the gaps in the original kind of constellation stencil. As an aside, I really like the look and the shine of metallic rub-ons, but if anyone has a trick for setting them so they don't smear, I would really love to know. So please share that in the comments. I had to really load up my fingers to get in all the nooks and crannies of the stencil shapes, but then that meant there was a lot of pigment on the cardstock, and I ended up bumping it, and it kind of got everywhere, my trimmer, on other paper, my fingers, my clothes. Like it was just kind of a mess afterwards. And to finish it out, I simply topped it with a little bit of gold mist and a large foiled sentiment that had similar stars as the original stencil. For our next technique, I'm going to create a shadow effect this time. You can use any medium with this. For example, I really want to try this with colored pencils because I think it would look really cool. But for today, I'm using alcohol markers, just colored directly onto a white background. I'm going to start with a gray shade, and I'm going to trace the left side only of every single stencil opening. Then I'm going to shift my stencil over just a hair to the right, and I'm going to color in my stencils this time fully. All those openings, I'm going to color them all the way in. This is going to give a really cool kind of shadow effect and add some really fun dimension, even though it's a completely flat card. Then I just topped it with mist, some matting and sequins, and we have another completed card. So now we're left with the 2-ish techniques. Neither of these just quite went the way I wanted them to, but I'm going to go ahead and show you them because I actually really like the cards that I ended up with. I'm just not sure that these count as a full technique on their own. For the third, I'm going to use my stencil with white acrylic paint. I wanted to stipple the paint through the openings using wadded up saran wrap to achieve a distressed and textured application. Full disclosure, I was out of plastic wrap. So these are just those really thin non-zip sandwich bags. Same stuff though, you know. And then I just pounced the acrylic paint through the openings. Now I definitely got some texture and distressing here. It was just too much distressing. The pattern just kind of disappeared. It just all looked like blotches. I think ultimately these openings were really too small for this technique to be successful. I still think it's a cool technique. I would really like to try it again with a more open stencil someday. I added some blue shimmer mist for a pop of color. I matted the sentiment and the card panel to match that mist, and another foiled sentiment finished off this card. For our final-ish technique, I wanted to try printing again with my stencils. I have kind of done this before. They were more kind of abstract, loosey-goosey prints. because they were with mist or watercolor based mediums or water based mediums. But I wanted to try to get a full negative print, just really solid coverage. So since this stencil had so many solid areas, I thought it would be perfect for this. However, I could never get as good a coverage as I wanted when I tried this technique. I tried it several times that I just didn't include here. I'm thinking I would have better luck achieving this with pigment ink. So I'd like to try that in the future. There were a few other things I wanted to try too, but since I never got solid enough coverage, I just got really frustrated and kind of moved on. However, what I did really love about this was that since I was really pressing the stencil into the card panel and using such a thin ink, it gave me a very detailed outline of every single opening on the stencil. Every star was imprinted very clearly. I really loved kind of this delicate level of detail combined with kind of the distressed finish of the blotchy coverage on the solid parts of the stencil. I went ahead and added some more droplets of ink, some other mist, some gold glitter die cuts, and a foiled sentiment die cut, and I actually really love how this card turned out. So that wraps up our 4th installment of One Stencil 3 Ways. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate your time. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing or clicking the like button. I hope to see you next Monday, and in the meantime, I hope you have a scrappy, happy week. Bye!